when you say workout like once every 5 or 7 days or whatever it comes out to for you, do you recommend doing all 4 or 5 of the major exercises just in a row that day, and then that's your workout for the day?
Yeah, for most people, that works best. Now, and then this reminds me of something else, is the topic of doing a full body versus splitting up the exercise and workout. If you're doing a workout like this, in most cases, if you do all those exercises in one workout, that's fine. You don't need to spread it out too much. Some people will need to split it up, but it depends on a variation in the rates of recovery of 2 different things. When you're doing the exercise, you are causing damage to the muscle. If you're lifting with a heavy enough weight, there are going to be microscopic tears in the muscle fibers. And it takes a certain amount of time for these to completely recover. Like Doug had actually mentioned earlier about fast twitch muscle fibers being, taking a little bit longer to recover. They're very, very quick to fatigue, but long to recover. Slow twitch muscle fibers tend to be the opposite. Well, in addition to the muscles being worked having to recover, every exercise you do has an effect on the rest of the body. There's an inflammatory response to that damage, and that inflammatory response is cumulative. If you do squats or leg press, and then you do a couple other pushing and pulling movements, every time you do an exercise, the damage to the muscles involved is going to cause an increase in that inflammation. Now, in some people, the recovery of both the individual muscles and total recovery of the body from that inflammatory response might track roughly evenly to where after about 4 or 5 days, they're completely recovered both sides. In some people, it might take longer for particular muscle groups to recover than it takes the body to recover from the inflammatory response. The inflammation has died down, but you still have some of that repair and remodeling going on inside the muscle itself. If you have somebody who's got, for example, a predominance of fast twitch fibers in the upper body and more slow twitch fibers in the lower body, they might find out that, after so many days, their legs are completely recovered, but they find that they're not making the same amount of progress with the upper body. Now, one way to determine, or if a person has all fast twitch fibers, they might just, after a period of time, find that nothing has recovered, not because the inflammatory response has been taken care of, but because the individual muscles haven't. Now, one way to determine whether or not you need to split things up or not is to try cutting the workout in half, staying at the same frequency. For example, if, let's say that your muscles, individual muscles, are taking longer to recover than the body's recovering from the inflammatory response. If you cut the workout in half, the inflammatory response is going to be less because you won't have as much cumulative inflammation as many exercises. So that should recover more quickly. If after a certain number of days you're still not stronger, well, then you know that it's not that your body is requiring as much time for the inflammatory response, but it's at the individual muscles. And if after a certain amount of time you are stronger, then you know that maybe it was just the inflammatory response that was the problem. It'd probably be easier if I diagrammed this, but basically, for the most part, doing the full body, you're not going to overstress yourself if the overall routine is brief. But if you find that particular body parts are not progressing while others are, then you can try cutting the routine in half and seeing if they respond to that. And again, it sounds like very little exercise, but you don't want to, it's better to get a little bit more recovery or better to do a little bit less exercise than your body can tolerate than to do too much, too often, in which case, rather than having a little bit slower progress, you'll shortcut it completely.
Could you talk a little bit about breathing and set?
About what?
Breathing technique?
Breathing. Actually, the best breathing technique is none. Most people try to set a pattern to the breathing, exhaling while lifting, inhaling while lowering, but it's best to just breathe as relaxed, as naturally as possible during the exercise.